Welcome to Vlog Thursday number 322. And I'm updating something over here. Good news is it's not affecting me. I'm updating my Stream Deck apparently has an update. All right. Let's get rolling on this right away because I going to be a little bit shorter. I don't know if I have I have some time. I don't have all the time to do all the things over a long time. I've been in Chicago the last couple days. That's been fun hanging out with some Comptia people. We'll be talking about that in momentarily. Great. Glad there's an undo button. There we go. I was getting all my notes lined up and accidentally hit delete and select all delete. Why not? Just delete all the notes. Let's start though. And I'm going to get back on the thing I keep saying I'm going to do is be organized. The first organization is where I'm going to be. Now, I didn't really announce it's going to be at Comptia because it's not like a public event, but what is a cool event that I'm going to be at, and I'm going to pull the website up because I'm going to do a little promo video for it because this is completely not sponsored. It's me going to be there, me just going to have fun and thinking this is something that my audience would really like as well. And that's going to be MSP GeekCon. So I will be there. I'll have a little bit more, and you can find other people like John Hammond, who has done a promo video on it. So it's definitely an interesting event, 65 days away, and it's for people who are wanting to geek out. So the MSP GeekCon, if you are in the IT services, especially the managed services space, you can join MSP Geek for free. MSP Geek is a nonprofit organization, and they are doing an event to level people up. So I've been, letting people know about it, people that might be interested. It's just a cool event. And I think I seen this morning, and we're doing this live in real time. If we go to Reddit R MSP, and I'll throw you a link here. I think, did I see that my friends at Huntress are doing something? What did they hit post? Right here. So, all right. Huntress likes educating the community too. And I'll throw that out there. I'll throw a link. There's actually a Reddit post in Reddit RMSP about Huntress sponsoring some passes for this. So, I mean, it does have a cost because, as I've learned from the people, there's a lot of money it takes to make these big events happen. And I see someone said it's too far. We do have, I believe, at least one person coming from the Netherlands. So, yeah, it is. I'm just saying if you're interested in an event like that. Obviously, if you're in Florida, it's a really short trip. If you're in the United States, it's a reasonably short trip. If you're far, far away, well, maybe there will be a European or Australian or New Zealand version of this at some point. But here we are, and I just thought I'd mention it for those wondering where I will be at any given time if you want to meet me at some places. So that's that. I want to jump into the questions because I got some good questions for people. I like this format where more people are reaching out and doing questions. It's kind of fun. I like the engagement from it, so people can be a little bit more in depth when they're asking these questions. And I'm trying to figure out exactly how I should handle it. Like, do I display these questions? Is it read along, or you're just fine for me to stare at the screen and read them? And some of them are kind of interesting because, like this first question, this comes up a lot, and I haven't done a video on it because the answer is null, so to speak. It's the question about how do you want to do authentication, and people are looking for the Linux version of Active Directory. And it's not that it doesn't exist. It's not that you can't use things like LDAP. It's just not Active Directory. It doesn't tie in as well. So despite my, it doesn't change my love for open source. It's not like central user management is a key Linux based feature, so to speak. So there's a little bit of, trickiness. So there's ways to do it. I mean, there's ways to do it, but there's nothing, so to speak, that's as well adopted because it comes down to adoption and integration into product. So yeah, sure, we can manage some Linux users, but it's usually from the business standpoint, a much deeper question of how are we going to tie all these things together? So in short, the answer to that question is SSO through Okta's kind of a pretty popular product because of this, because they'll glue a lot of different things together. So when you get into the enterprise space, you're going to see a lot of Okta, AD being the dominant king, and just lots of things even the Linux things tie to AD. And because so many companies tie to AD and different SSOs related to it, that's just going to be another spot where you'll see a lot of it. There's not like this, you know, thing you're overlooking. You're probably wondering, well, why isn't Free Radius used more, or LDAP, or some of the other ones out there? And none of them are just is integrated and supported. You may be able to have support for your project, or maybe you build support for your project, but when it comes to that, there's not any um, like here's the answer. It's kind of unfortunate, but just the enterprise, it's the same reason the enterprise world, especially the enterprise desktop space, is not occupied by Linux right now, and probably won't be in the near future. It's going to be a while before the Linux support, if it ever happens. So yeah, there's not the best easy to integrate directory service option, but that comes up all the time. So maybe it's something I'll do a video about, just to kind of have a pointer and be like, here's what you end up seeing in the marketplace. Here's kind of the why, and why I also don't think there's going to be a replacement soon for it. And I think it's because some of the home users too kind of go, well, I just want to manage the users at home, and you can do that. Something like a Synology does have some integrations to be able to do it without having to spend the licensing fees on Microsoft, but there's not really that level in the enterprise market. Now I know Synology is getting into the identity market and they want to expand that product, and it does some AD emulation. I really haven't tested to tell you how good it actually is, but it's a good question. Maybe if there's enough interest in it, I'll make that as a video topic as well. Um, the next question was, I thought, kind of funny. With your love for Linux, why didn't you pursue a career in Linux admin? And they said, it more fun to just repair TVs and struggle with all the fun and to be your own boss? Well, while I was repairing TVs, so this is 2005 and 2006, I owned a TV repair business with a partner, which later I switched to having the TV repair business, which I subsequently got rid of in 2009. We were repairing TVs all the way up until the price on TVs became extremely low and they weren't worth fixing. But the biggest thing is the reason I did that. I was actually doing a lot of Linux admin back then. I was doing mail server admin, and there was a big forums that I used to help manage all the servers for. So I was doing Linux admin then. So I did these things adjacent to each other. I was not one thing. And I also started my business in 2003. I started my business because when I worked in corporate, everything going wrong in corporate and that job falling apart because the company went into bankruptcy, I just decided, why not just run a business myself, which I, sometimes I do things not because they're easy, but because I thought they'd be easy. So 20 years later, I still managed to have a business because I didn't really have a plan B after I started the business. So yeah, I don't really have like, I did Linux admin. I like being an independent contractor to kind of work for me more than anything else, because I'm a very self motivated person and have a lot of connections that I've always curated and continue to curate and expand my connections. So I've always had people wanting to hire me for things. The other side of the coin is, if I would have went to corporate, I would have made a lot more money than I make, even though I do well with my business. Corporate pays really, really well, but it wouldn't be what I'm happy about. I like the diversity of problems that I encounter and diversity of challenges that I get to solve. So that's what kind of keeps me going on all of that. So that's kind of my answer for that one. Um, this one I don't really understand. I don't. Do you have any experience troubleshooting clients with duplicate IDs from misconfiguration or malicious use of captive portals? No, I can't say. I mean, I can't say we've never done it. It's just not a daily task. Um, I mean, if someone's trying to clone someone's MAC address on a captive portal, that's a tricky one. There's not an easy answer for that. There's not like if someone clones it, you have to figure out which one's which and start sorting it out. And I think that's what they're asking, but I'm not sure. It's not that common of a problem. This is one of those things that especially home users conflate, is looking at some of these obscure ways you can do things and reading about it from a security research standpoint. But from a reality standpoint, it's a lesser used type of thing. It's maybe if you are a very high value target, you're going to really want to lock things down. You're going to want to authenticate with more than a MAC address, of course, and you're going to want to validate people at a very high level. But for the average business, even some of the larger companies, that's not something that's always going to be the case. It really comes down to what is your risk tolerance, because it's the question people come up with about the there's so many things you can do to high levels of security, but it's about budgets and everything else, because that becomes it's like the locking every Mac down to every port. Can you? Yeah, but does that always work in the enterprise? If they have an IT team with the budget for it, um, that's where things can be very, very different. Is whether or not they have the budget for it. Even my friend's place, they fairly large IT operation. They had to get a new CISO because they were only spending like 35 million a year in IT, and they said that's way under budget. They bumped it up to 60 million the next year, and they still think they're under budget on it. So that becomes the question of how much further can they push it. He was able to get 60 million into the budget now, and is that enough for the size of enterprise they are? That's a tricky negotiation. And if they're not doing Mac VLAN locking, by the way, if they were, the budget would be higher because they manage so many devices. So that's this is yeah, it's one of those things. Like, we know a lot of ways to secure things. It's just a matter of manageability of those. Because there's the argument not to use certain tools or cloud enabled tools like RMMs because they present a risk. But the other side is, how do you solve without those tools? You throw people at it. I'm just going to hire 100 more people that all make over $100,000 a year, rather than having a tool that automates something. There's options. It's just about, where's the affordability of those options land. So um, that's a little rant on that one there. Thank you for all you do, and awesome. I'm never sure if I should say people's names that much. Um, Most likely I did something wrong, probably with the local DNS. And yes, it's always DNS. We know that. For faster resolution. Example, Gmail components won't load. However, I logged into a wireless AP and router PFSense worked fine. When I reconnect, things that didn't work appear to be working for the moment, perhaps a cache timing. I'm kind of missing some issues of what you changed. So if you're seeing some DNS delays, I don't know what you did wrong. By default, the DNS and PFSense works wonderful out of the box. Change it back to the default settings would be my first suggestion, because you didn't really say I'm not clear on what you did to change it to try to optimize it. So if you're having problems with some of the things, start at default. If you modified things, and go from there. That's a lot of the consulting. Sometimes it's just, let's put it back at default, especially when people don't know what knobs were turned to get them to where, uh, where they were at. Let's see. Another question came in. I'll answer real quick here. Um, your video and HA proxy SSL offloading works well, but with traditional HTTP HTTPS, but it doesn't seem to play well with those use of WebSockets. You can there's a forum post in PFSense's forums. It's more in depth. If you need to set it up with there are certain WebSockets I believe you can make it work with, but there's extra things you have to do to make that work. So it's not that you can't do it. It's probably, I need to do an updated video, because there's certain things. It's just, here's the challenge. What's in scope in the video? How far do I go? Do I cover WebSockets and and how to configure? Let me find. I'm googling it so I can pull it up here. I just pulled up a post just to talk about it. Like, there's people who talk about the different things you have to do to get WebSockets working in here. The one that came to mind is, this write up is about Bitwarden, and about getting WebSockets working in Bitwarden in here. So there's definitely ways to do it. You just have to figure out where the details of what needs to be connected to what, and there's forum posts that can help you with that. And the trick is, and maybe I should do a how to Google search. Like, what people will start doing is how to do WebSockets with HA proxy and PFSense with Home Assistant, and you may not get the right answer because it may not exist yet. But if you just look for the WebSockets part, and then you understand what part you need, you're like, okay, I need this. So I can actually look at this one that's about Bitwarden and modify the parameters to work with my setup. So, um, the load balancing part, I'm a little confused. How do you what do you want for the load balancing? That's the part I'm confused. Let me look again at your message here. Load balancing is a different thing than HA proxy. HA proxy works well with traditional HTTPS, but does not play well with those WebSockets at home. HA proxy with WebSockets pages. Yeah, what's the load balancing part you're asking about? That's what I'm not clear on that. So, hello to the land down under, Alexi. I keep wanting to say LXC, like LXC containers. What is your recommendation for a firewall with SIM for Raspberry Pi? None. I don't have any firewall with SIM suggestions for a Raspberry Pi, and it wouldn't be fast enough to run them. So I'm not aware of anything that exists in that space. Um, if there is something, I'm just unaware of it. But the SIM part is actually intense, and I don't think a little ARM processor is going to be able to. I mean, do, can do it? Could you get Sericata or something working on a Raspberry Pi? Yes, but at what traffic rate? It would be the question. Can you help me with an issue related to PSN's web filtering, although it's directly not related to your expertise? I have a whole video on it of why we don't do web filtering, and I have a video titled Web Filtering where I dive into that as a topic. I'm experiencing some problems, wondering if you could provide any assistance. I was wondering if you have any issues with PSNs. Yeah. Web filtering when it's installed with Snort. We don't do web filtering on PSNs because it sucks. A whole video about it. So yeah, load balancing would be HA proxy balancing between multiple stream servers for CPU intensive applications. Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out how it applies to Home Assistant because that I know of, Home Assistant doesn't have a high availability where you can balance it between two Home Assistant servers. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a configuration that can be done, but I don't. Yeah, I don't understand the load balance. I don't know what I would do to the challenge with like how you would load balance something is you have to have a backend server that supports it as well. Like it's not just an HA proxy problem. It is a you know how you have to have the servers configured so they're able to provide that. It's the same question. I think I should have Techno Tim on because me and him talked about this before. I can't remember if he's got a video on it, but it's a frequent request he gets. He's a developer. Techno Tim does work in the industry, but there's always those questions that people ask, and he gets a lot of people ask this channel like, "Oh, so Kubernetes will magically or Docker will magically either one of these will magically make these uh, applications fault tolerant and HA. But the reality is, it doesn't work like that because the application has to have awareness. It's not just about sending requests to more than one place. You have to have a system that can handle it. Now, if you're serving up static web pages, and I know server A can only handle X number of load per minute, X number of requests per minute, I can split them and say, all right, I'm going to get 2x per minute, and my server can only handle 1x per minute. So I will load balance between by really simple explanation here by sending half the request to every other server. That's great for static web pages. What about when there's writes? What about when there's data that has to be saved? Now you get a different architectural problem that you have to really take into consideration when you do this, that you have to have something that can actually take both of these and process them. And that is where the servers have to be not individual servers, because if one accepts data, that data won't match on the other one. Now, this is where the databases are on the back end. There's ways to solve this problem, but it's an architectural design problem. So, uh, thoughts on cost-effective, possibly open source solution for third-party patching? Never used them. Never found one that worked well. So we use Ninja for patching, Ninja RMM. There's a reason we do it. There's no way for us to patch all those systems otherwise. So there's Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's something out there. The problem is there's been projects in the past, like the open source project years ago, like the WSUS offline updater. I always thought that was a cool project back in the bandwidth limited days, and it was awesome. But keeping packages like that maintained is very tricky, and they need a business behind it because patching is a business problem. Because the open source world has solved it. If you're just running Linux servers, Linux servers patch great. Unattended upgrades is amazing. So yeah, I don't know of any cost effect. There's a reason we use the products we do. I've never seen anything that would compel me or amaze me in the open source space for patching, especially because you're trying to patch closed source systems, usually like Windows. With your mention of DNS, do you have a quotable opinion regarding Sony lawsuit in Germany? That is not too much of a rabbit hole to go down. Um, I made a short video on it. So, I mean, I clearly explained it in the video. I don't know what else you're asking for. So it's Sony. Sony is trying to break DNS because they don't want certain sites that they feel violate their intellectual property to resolve. So their idea is to shut up a DNS company. Yeah, I'm not a legal expert, but my answer was F Sony in that video. So screw you, Sony. There's my quote if you're looking for one. Sony is behaving poorly. That's not news. Sony behaves poorly. So ridiculous to deploy UDM Pro with SMB deployments of PF Sense. Why would I put a UDM with a PF Sense? It's either or, not both. The controller needs to run somewhere. Put it on a cloud key or put it in the cloud. For most part, if it's a managed client, we put it in our cloud, our controller for UniFi. If it's an unmanaged client, we'll sell them a cloud key. And I mean, I take that back. Some clients do have their own infrastructure, or maybe they want to purchase some space from Linode. You can run a $10 a month Linode instance to run your UniFi controller. So that some companies opt to go that way as well. It kind of depends on the company. Cloud keys are an easy sell because it's a one-time purchase, of roughly $200. So I believe Zoho has some security issues a while back. Yeah, Zoho's had I think they've had a couple CVEs. I mean, they have patches for them, but it's about patching, as we mentioned earlier. So if you have any of these things and you plan to make them public facing, please make sure you have a plan by which to patch them. That's the biggest thing. What's your take on ZFS Linux versus TrueNAS? Manageability. It comes down to the project and the manageability of the project. Who am I handing it off to? Am I handing it off to people that can manage ZFS on Linux, or am I handing it off someone that's better suited to manage an appliance? TrueNAS has a solid appliance approach to it that doesn't require as much Linux knowledge. I should say more specifically, doesn't require a lot of command line knowledge for configuring things. So, I've met some people over time. We helped out this college, and one of the problems is they had a really, really he was sharp. I really liked the guy, but he also put himself in a hole. He built, as this small college needed infrastructure over the years, he built it all custom with all custom Linux scripts, and he did a nice job. Then they kept having trouble hiring people because it's hard to hire people that also knew that level of knowledge. And the college, when they found them, couldn't afford the people who had the level of knowledge of building everything like this. If you're a good Linux admin, you make a lot of money. If you are a level 1 tech, TrueNAS is awesome to be able just to go, here's how I create a data set. Here's how you share a data set. Oh, wait, I don't have to go into the Samba configuration and configure parameters. What's a Samba configuration? All depends on what level of tech you want to throw at it. That's actually my take on a lot of, the people who say, build your own firewall. I'm like, you can, absolutely. Who's going to manage it is what it comes down to. Oh, let's see. How does one put in the cloud? I've got a video on how to set up the controller on Linux. Follow my video called How to Install a UniFi Controller. I did it like a month or two ago. I walk you through the process. I'm going to do a more in-depth video, including the DNS part, but you just point DNS at the IP address, but I'll do a more in-depth video on that coming soon. Top 5 open source software for an MSP. Ooh, I like the clickbaity title for that. I don't know. Probably going to be like that we use. It's going to be pfSense. It's going to be TrueNAS, and it's going to be XCPNG. Those are the three. Sorry, I'm gonna cut you down to three here because ones that you'll see a lot of usage. It's not that there's not other tools that might be used. Bitwarden. There we got four. We got you to four. So Bitwarden, XCPNG, TrueNAS, and pfSense. Yeah, those are the big ones that I would say are relatively there may be some other tool you have to solve a niche problem, but it's not going to be as prevalent in the MSP space. Well, I assumed you were bringing it up from the video, to be honest. I figured you watched the video and said, too long. Let me see if I can get Tom to condense it to one sentence. uh, do you think that implementing IDS and IPS to firewall is a viable solution? My answer is no. Yes, but I can't say their name. They hire through a third party. So you apply for enterprise IT jobs. They use headhunting companies essentially, or however that works. I don't know that. I don't know that process very well. OpenSSH. Yeah, I mean, you could say that OpenSSH is used in the MSP market. I was thinking tools that people that are bigger, like component level. At some point, you could say lots of open source things are used, but yeah. Before I answer, I see a few more questions came in, but I wanted to answer um, one of them real quick here. That what I was doing at Comptia. Um, yeah, Graylog is good, but I would not say it's all over the place. The MSP space, that's still niche. Graylog's a great tool, but it's kind of still a niche tool by comparison. BSD TCP stack, yeah, that's all over the place too. But I was just at Comptia, and I wanted to mention this before we get too far down the road here. I'm already 30 minutes in. The reason I was at Comptia was not to talk about Network Plus or Security Plus, but to talk about some of the bigger things that are going on at Comptia and why I joined. I may do a dedicated video on this, but the um, short version is many of you may know or may have comments on, as I did, Comptia's position that they are greatly wrong about and then changed, by the way, which was the right to repair things. But why does that happen is the real question. And how do you bring about change for things like that? And how do you get involved? It turns out easier than you think. Um, I'm now on several committees for the Comptia stuff. I had my badge floating around here somewhere. I was going to hold it up, but I forgot. But I got involved a lot more in Comptia because instead of trying to complain about things from the outside, I went from there to, with many of my friends' help that are there and a lot of smart people that I know, join them to work inside of Comptia to be on boards and committees and help shape and steer how Comptia looks at policies and those policies and how they may affect the greater IT industry. Now, I'm not specifically at all involved in things like Comptia's certification programs. That's not my field of expertise. I'm not a certified person. I think those are great, and there's other smart people working on that. But it's some of the overall influences they have on things, if you want to look it up, like Trustmark, and how they will be going forward and working as a community to help shape a lot of things that are coming down the pipe for the IT and MSP business, especially here in the United States, because undoubtedly at some point regulation may come, and Comptia is probably the best prepared body to help deal with that regulation and perhaps act in best faith of the industry, provided that they are staffed well and have a good concise amount of volunteers that are willing to help and understand that work in the industry of what's missing, what we need, and how do we improve it. So I may do a video on that. If there's an interest, leave comments on that of what we did at Comptia and some of that, because there's things we can't talk about because it's, there are certain levels of this is some stuff we're working on. We just can't, it'll be all public when it's released. Nothing's secret or shady. It's just like, you don't want to talk about something that isn't out yet because you don't know how it's going to shape until the policy is actually out. So we have some things that we're like all working on, and then we can finally, okay, now we've done it. That way we don't throw anyone like, oh, we thought we were doing this, but we did this over here. So nonetheless, that's some stuff I did there. But if there's more interest in that later, let me know. The and I'll bring on like my friend Jason Slagle and Matt Lee, who are there with me, and we can kind of do a recap of some of the things we did in regards to policy, security controls. And it's a lot of interesting discussion about this. So you're deploying your first TrueNAS scale box this weekend. Have watched most of your content on TrueNAS. Any last minute gotchas often overlooked you may have covered in your videos? Not really last minute gotchas on there. I would say though, you probably the one of the things that people come up with is like, do I need, it seems like I have to have a slog device, SLOG. You probably don't. That's pretty specific on workloads, and you're probably safe to turn sync rates off if you need better performance. That's not a big deal. So there's less about gotchas. I may do an updated video because it's just a couple things that you can probably turn off, and for home users, it's just not needed. Even a lot of businesses don't need it either. So nope, I don't apply Scrum. I don't do those frameworks. Are you in Comptia because you are going to talk about pfSense Plus? No. Comptia does like putting the plus at the end of things, network plus and security plus and things like that. You are right. Let's see. Pull up these questions real quick. What do we got here? Actually, I'm going to do it this way. All right. When you consult on XCP&G installs, how often is high availability networking a component of the project, and how do you accomplish it? High availability networking is something that a lot of people ask for, but it comes down to, do you have a couple switches? If you look up how to set up a high availability switch where you have multiple network ports across multiple switches, it's something that absolutely can be done. It does, unless it's an enterprise grade setup, it doesn't come up that often. And I think me and Steve talked about this on last Vlog Thursday. It's like the people who were upset that I didn't have redundant links on my XCP&G servers. And I'm like, if we go through the tickets, that come in for XCP&G, do you know how rare, I'm not saying zero, but how rare a switch failure is the problem, a cable failure is the problem, even power supplies. I watch my last vlog. We dove into some of the statistics. Like, hardware problems are a 1% problem now, if not less. They're just with one minor exception. Even as small as it is, once you start slicing out what that 1% of those hardware problems are, you'll find hard drives were 80% of them. So hard drives are still an issue, but the rest of the stuff is just so stinking reliable that it's not something that comes up on or needed in every setup. I mean, as much as people like to hate on UniFi switches, for the volume of switches, I think we have a less than 1% failure rate on switches. Like, we've RMA'd just a couple of switches, and we just install tons of these. So even with UniFi, but go back over to some of your enterprise, like a Cisco 10 gig or some of that top of rack stuff, the stuff is, it's on eBay because it's all pulled out after, like, it's been turned on for the last 8 years and it still works fine. So it's not as big of a problem. Let's see. What do you think that Netgate pfSense can do to improve its position in 2023? Firewall landscape has changed. Features aren't available on PF. I don't know why people well, if you want to look at the feature landscape, it's figure out how many features Fortinet has and how they baked them all into the firewall, and ask if it's a good idea. Ask all the companies that got pwned to have Fortinets if it's a great idea to bake all those features in, especially with poor code quality. Fortinet's been in the news a lot, and it's hard. They try a lot of stuff in that firewall, and it gets broken a lot. So I don't see it as a problem. I think the next generation firewall is going to save you is way oversold. I don't know. not really, not I'm not really buying it as a problem. So, yeah, I got another question here we'll answer. I'm trying to answer all the questions. We have a lot of questions today. Uh, when you update when you update your UniFi switch, you just turn off all your VMs and accept the downtime? Yeah. Yeah, I can live with I think when I updated my 25 gig switch, the downtime was 3 minutes. So, yeah, I 3 minutes of downtime won't if you have a company that can't have 3 minutes of downtime, then you should go with something more redundant. That's if you have a company that can accept 3 minutes, maybe we'll say 10. You got to have a window in case it takes a little longer. But if you need 10 minutes, if your company can't survive with 10 minutes of downtime, that is a thing you need to know. It's so a lot of companies can't. I get it. So you put in a redundancy level for that. That's all. Let's see. I don't understand this question. Oh, would you cover why users want to download an image versus installing an ISO? Kali has both ISO images, but I don't understand why you would want one or the other. I'm not exactly sure. When I install Kali with an ISO, so I don't understand your question. I guess I just don't do a VM import myself. I don't know what the advantage would be. So I'm confused on your question there because I usually just download the ISO. That's for things. Got an IoT device is only accessible by its own wireless SSID. It can't join on my own Wi-Fi network. Can I plug in compatible, say on pfSense and a route bridge private SSD? Maybe. Um, you can do that. You have to. There's a very limited number of Wi-Fi compatible. It's listed in pfSense's documentation what Wi-Fi devices are compatible. I've done a video on it, I believe. So yes, you could create a one-off IoT device network via your pfSense, provided you got one of the cards that pfSense supports for it. So it's not just a yes answer; it's yes, but make sure you get the card that's supported on there. Uh, let's. What else we got in here? Uh, why are permissions so difficult to get right into your NAS core? I applied ACL one data set in a pool. Now Windows 10 credentials whenever I access other data sets within the pool. They're easy if you use Active Directory, so I'm going to do a video on it because that's what you do in the business world. For home users, I don't find them difficult, but people, well, I take that back. If you've not done ACLs, they may have a higher bar than you expect for challenge. By the way, the same people who often have problems with TrueNAS ACLs probably haven't done them in Windows, where they also will have problems with ACLs. So yes, um, stop picking on 40 Yeah, no. 40 picking on themselves. 40 hard codes passwords. Their CVEs are all over the place because they have so many hard coded credentials, backdoors they installed in the VPN. It just, yeah, it's just a mess. 40 kind of got a bad rep for they're their own fault. Have you looked at NetFoundry's Open Z ZD Cloud? Nope, I have not. Why are permissions so difficult? Answer that one. Until 2018, I've been working in a Cisco environment. However, watching your video on pfSense, surprised the amount of functionality pfSense provide for free. Yes, pfSense is like highly featured. There's not a, it's amazing what you get and what you can do on a pfSense, and to think it's a project you can download and load yourself. I mean, you can even get into the BGP stuff and everything else. Let's see. Images flash SD card, ISO would be installed media typically. Yeah, maybe that's. I always just download ISO. It says everything I do is virtual. So, how do you prevent a ransomware attack? Well, prevention is the wrong word. You're not stopping the attack. You have a mitigation and a plan with Synology. I've got a video called I think I used the word ransomware in it. Synology snapshots and ransomware. But if you find my video on Synology snapshots, you can use snapshots. So if your data becomes goofed up from human error or malicious humans or malicious bots, whoever goofs up the data, a malicious bot, a malicious people telling the bot to do it, or just good old human error. The Synology snapshots are the solution to your woes there. They are not going to prevent ransomware. They're going to give you a methodology to do recovery. Update auto and that's so auto updates enabled by default. Neat. That's going to be fun for people who didn't know that. The best is when you update UniFi switch, it knocks all the others offline and they get stuck in failed to adopt, and you have to drive the office and cycle everything. Oh yeah, I always make sure I update them in, you do them in order when you update them. There's a method to this. So let me pull up. Is this my lab? I think I have my lab here. We'll throw the lab up here, but yeah, the first switch, you don't update this switch here while you're updating this switch. You can work backwards is one easy way to do it. So maybe I'll update the last one on a chain, then I'll update these, and then I'll update these. But you don't just update them all at once. If there's dependencies on these. Now, if this was feeding all the other ones, I could do all the other ones simultaneously, or just do this one and then click update to this one. You just got to think about it and be conscious of your strategy for doing the switches. Looking for a good solution to access work remotely on a budget. Netgear 1100 bad idea, or the 2100. The 2100 is good. Early start much today? Yeah, a little bit. I have somewhere to go today in about an hour. So I figured if I start early, I can still go longer. Well, less than an hour I got to leave. So branches back to the root because updated switch restarts and adopts the lower switches. So hopefully that helps that. Let's see. Someone did have another email in here. Firewall setup questions. I think I probably have a video on this one. We're going to find an easy way to display these. Maybe I'll use Pastebin. Security is always high on my mind. What are your thoughts on setting individual rules for the items you need to use in a firewall and blocking the rest? Many firewalls have an any allow rule enabled by default. I do not see disabled. Are you talking about egress filtering? Egress filtering. Welcome to some more fun. Yes, by default, pfSense does allow, and I'll use pfSense as an example, but many firewalls do, because unless you have the time to figure out every other port besides 443 and 53 for DNS, of course, DNS maybe is answered internally, you can do egress filtering. You will turn it on and then you will discover what breaks, and then you can kind of keep working from there. You just got to sit down and figure out what you need. You can do egress filtering. I've seen people, and I think it's oversold, and I'm a security person, but I still think it's a little oversold for most people to turn that on. Do you have the time to deal with the outcome, the challenges that may come with doing it? It's not a bad idea. It's a good exercise, especially a learning process of what's exiting your network. So egress filtering is definitely something you can do. From a network engineering standpoint, awesome. I have some servers, I want these locked down, and I know it's very predictable what these servers need to do. So you restrict those down. But the other thing of it is, it's not the security protection you may think, because when we look at things like command and control servers, if you look at the modern threat landscape, they're not generating random ports that they're going out. They're going out the common ports. They're blending in the traffic. So it's a fun exercise, but it's not necessarily the giant bolster you need to security. And when you debrief, this is the best thing you can do is spend a lot of time debriefing on modern, incidents, and read differ reports and just kind of talk to people about the incident. And you can then later go back and you get to replay what would have solved this. Would an egress filter have stopped this ransomware attack? Oh, it was a 0 day in Outlook. Oh, it was an email. Oh, okay. So I guess not. It was something they clicked on. It was a website. It was a unpatched Exchange server that was public facing. It was an unpatched file transfer server with the admin interface explode. It was a unpatched Veeam system with a port internally, and they already had a foothold, and they were just waiting for something to pivot. So you have to kind of look at each of the threat models, and especially the modern ones. I mean, the older attacks, yeah, maybe, but the modern ones generally egress out. Matter of fact, I don't know that this was ever used. I thought it was these are sometimes those fun journeys into proof of concept. Someone had wrote a command and control server that used Gmail. And so if you allow Gmail traffic at all, which is, traffic just going back and forth to Gmail, you could have a CNC server on there. There's CNC stuff that works in Azure. It looks like Azure traffic. Someone had stuff that was pulling things from Dropbox because a lot of people use Dropbox. So unless you're going to block Dropbox, but then if you use Dropbox, you don't block it. And sometimes if they're a more advanced threat actor, to look at what you're using. And because so many people use Office 365, anything threat actors can do to obscure the traffic into Office 365, it doesn't really help you do much. So yeah. Also use caution updating AP that has wireless uplinks. Yeah. I'll mention too, though. We'll bring it up real quick. Whoops. Let me pull up the other one. Pull up the lab. Is there anything running? Eric's doing something. Or is he? Well, his server's turned on. But I want to just share this tab instead. Kind of how you deal with some of the downtime. That's super easy to do. If we go here to advanced, and maybe I don't know if this needs a video or not, but if I hit enable maintenance mode, it'll list all the VMs that are on this connection on my storage server. And by doing this, I just hit OK. It shuts down all those VMs. I update the switch, and then the switch comes up and I go, cool, switch works. I disable maintenance mode, and all the VMs on that storage server start back up. So there's easy ways to do some of these updates to switches where it's not much work on my part. It's go here, enable maintenance mode, update, wait till update's done, disable maintenance mode, have a great day. I did this already because I was updating switches this morning. It was I barely called it an inconvenience. So ever have servers DDoS? Yeah, it sucks. Does UniFi support STP? Why not mesh your UniFi switches and depend on STP? It does. I could. I don't want to put two of the aggregation switches in. I'm being lazy, and my rack wouldn't look as cool. It would have. It would. I just have to double up on everything. I don't want to. I would have to put more network cards in to facilitate all that. And once again, I don't really. It seems so unnecessary to go drop $3,000 more on it. Or maybe not 3,000. One of those are about 1,000, a little over 1,000 each, plus the extra cabling and extra wiring. I mean, it just feels so unnecessary to do. I know I could, but it doesn't feel needed. XCP&G VM desktop with the RDP X2Go, not so smooth like VirtualBox a PC with Ubuntu. I don't know. I don't use it that much at all. I did it because I know a lot of people had a use case, so I did a video for it. And this sometimes is a problem. Like I used it for a while ago when I was testing something. I was using the published applications, but I kept finding some laggy issues with it. It wasn't buttery smooth. But it was more of a X2Go problem than anything else, I felt. So I don't use it much. Egress filtering is great for the IoT SRV networks. When you know the things you want to reach are Debian servers in your home assistant. Yeah. I do extensive filtering on public Wi-Fi's 80, 443, 993, 995, UDP, number of common VPN ports, DNS redirected local servers are allowed. Yeah. It just depends on whether or not you want to deal with any of the trouble that comes in it. So, do you use any type of ad blocker for your business networks? Yes, we use Zoros. So Zoros is our filtering tool, and it does have some ad blocking options in there. So I've done a video on it. I might do another video because I did a sponsored video, but I might do an unsponsored one just to kind of walk people through like the quick 5 minutes of it. It's a paid commercial product, but we're paid to do this for people. So downstream, we're paying a company for the management tools that make it easy for us to do this and manage it with our clients. I'll You can find ZORUS is the company. You can find the video I did on it. Why don't you like Cisco devices? I never said I didn't like them, with some exceptions. I think like the Cisco Business Dashboard is garbage. Cisco and Cisco's going to generally, and this is where Cisco's marketing is all over the place. Which Cisco are you talking about? The Meraki version of Cisco, the Cisco, or the Cisco small business that feels more like rebranded Linksys? Which Cisco are you asking about? So each one of them is a different category of product, although they all carry the Cisco badge. So generally, your enterprise Cisco is going to have more features. Those features are going to come with more licenses. And I always like to ask the question, because I actually had a discussion on this while I was at Comptia with another IT company. They were like, "Oh no, Cisco has way more features." I'm like, "It's going into small business. Are you going to use those features?" Well, no. I'm like, "Okay, I don't understand your argument. If you don't need the extra features that is offered by Cisco for this small business deployment, then why do you need a Cisco?" Because they were complaining because Cisco's on back order and they can't get the project done. I said, "That's fine. I'll bid on it and take it from you." We've done a lot of people where um, they couldn't get product for Cisco, insisted on Cisco, and then later used us to do it with the UniFi. UniFi is substantially less money. We bid on a big project, and it's insane because I felt we had a really good margin on the project, and I couldn't believe how much more people wanted for the Cisco. It was incredible, but Cisco also cost that much more. But the project is done, the client is happy, and everything works, and they all went with UniFi. So yeah, there's different ways to do it. Oh yeah, Cisco Firepower. Never used it. Heard lots of stories about it. The Cisco DNA Center. Um, I don't know. Regarding Bitwarden, is there per seat licensing a dynamic or fixed process? Pre-negotiated number of seats? They got their prices listed on their site, so their prices are their prices. I don't understand the question. You buy them a year ahead of time? Is that the question? Their pricing is public. So I'm not going to quote their pricing. I'm just going to share it. There's their pricing. There's their business pricing. $3 month seat per user, $5 for enterprise. And what's the difference between enterprise, you ask? They have that listed here too. Per month per user. This is what we do. We use the enterprise one. I like it. It's cheap for what you get. So that's the hopefully answers the Bitwarden pricing question. All right. Yes, buying ahead of time. I always pre-buy for a year. So I don't know, click on buy and it'll tell you. I think it can be maybe they have a monthly option. I don't know. I buy for a year. What about LastPass? You mean Lost Pass? Oh, there's so much more to the story. It's interesting. It's messy. They did some dumb things at LastPass. I did a video on it. Well, the price is pretty much what'll stop. I mean, I've seen the demos on it. I know it does cool things, but the pricing and things like that for it is usually goes, well, is it worth it? Some companies say yes. Some companies hate dealing with the Cisco um, legal team. My enterprise friends always have horror stories. My favorite one, and I wish it could be made public, like the details, because the emails back and forth were terrible and funny at the same time. Cisco, to close a deal that was worth like millions of dollars for one particular product for my friend's company. They one component was given with perpetual licensing, and they buy a lot of stuff from Cisco. So this is just one part of the deal. And Cisco tried removing the perpetual licenses and setting renewals. And they said, no, we get this perpetual. And they said, well, that isn't what perpetual means, is what Cisco said. And they're like, you can't redefine words. This is I don't know if my friend's watching, but like the back and forth with them going, you can't redefine the language of perpetual. We will beat you in court if you charge us for this. And they go, well, it was perpetual 2 years ago, but it's not perpetual now. Well, but we bought it with perpetual. It was perpetual licensing with some type of like, as long as we have this hardware, and the hardware wasn't ready or end of life cycle. There's a little nuance to it, but still perpetual. Like you can't just redefine terms, Cisco, but the legal department tried. So yes. No, there are no good open source solutions, and I say good. I'm not saying I'm completely aware that Squid exists. I just you asked the word good. So if you asked, are there open source solutions for web filtering? Yes. Are there good ones? No. There's pretty much even the business companies that have solutions, all the firewalls are using Squid on the back end. Like the Arista firewall is an example of one I've talked about on a channel before. They're using Squid on the back end. They don't call it Squid. They make Squid more manageable and better, but Squid is it's a good name for it because picture trying to wrestle with a squid, and that's the feeling you'll have if you try to run Squid in your environment. You'll find it to be a pain. It's not a great. It's not a easy solution to manage, and that's when you buy these commercial firewalls that are using Squid. That's what you're doing is you're paying them to manage Squid and make it all work. And by the way, one of the problems you run into if you want to run full TLS 1.3, you will break Squid. It can't see if you, especially if you get to ESNI, encrypted SNI. If you're running all that encrypted, the only way to get Squid or any filtering, by the way, is to unravel that and break it. So you have to man in the middle a lot of things in a bad way. Removed all the credits for them, changed all the passwords and password manager replacement. Yes. We don't use CrowdStrike. We use SentinelOne. I don't get the impression for my industry, which is being an outside IT for companies, that CrowdStrike is the right fit for us. My understanding from what I've talked to people a lot is they just they want to sell to big kind of enterprise companies. They don't want to sell to people like me who sell to small businesses. That's my understanding from other vendors. I don't have any direct usage of it, so I don't really know. I don't know. I don't think it's a bad product. It's a popular product in the market. It's, I believe, comparable to SentinelOne, which we use. So DNI standard appliance is 80,000 for the smallest one. Yeah, the pricing is definitely for the big people. I've heard a few people say it that the CrowdStrike pricing is not aligned with SentinelOne pricing at all. But I don't know. I haven't used it, so I've heard this from people in the forums. Oddly, CrowdStrike has never reached out to me. I've never heard from a CrowdStrike sales rep. That's not an offer, an invite that I want you to call me. I'm just throwing it out there. They haven't bothered me. Other people bother me all the time. Oddly, not CrowdStrike. So I don't think, which makes me think they're not targeting me at this moment as a potential customer. So I don't know many people in my space that use it. I take that back. I don't know people in my space that use it. I know people that used to work in corporate that used it. Yeah, so the definitely I feel like I said they're more enterprise focused. My two favorite, and I just did a video on this, is Huntress and Sentinel One. Great tools, great people. Um, there's some nuance always with dealing with security, and that's why I did a recent video on what it looks like dealing with security. So hopefully that makes sense. Uh, we got hit by Hive last year. They used S1 for containment and cleanup. Our IT brain trust did not want to pay. So now we have CrowdStrike, not a fine. I've heard it called Clown Strike by a lot of people. I don't, I think they've, there's, it's just a great play on words. I don't know if it's actually descriptive of the product or just the perfect one letter switch that makes IT people laugh. I've definitely heard it called Clown Strike a lot. Now, my confusion is I've heard it be more expensive than Sentinel One, but then I've heard businesses go with CrowdStrike because it was cheaper. But I get these weird answers, and I don't. And I'm in the MSP, managed service provider space, where we're generally like the middleman managing it for smaller businesses. So I think it's just they maybe like a very direct approach and less the reseller approach. Do you have many Switch Enterprise PoE done with your customers? That Switch must be either really good or they just it's never in stock. We got watches on things, so we buy things just to have them in stock as soon as we can get them in stock. There's a lot of people doing that, so that's why, like, the UI notify service exists to let you know when something's in stock. It's just a matter of sniping it right off the site. The demand is still exceeding the inventory in some cases. Can snapshot replication recovery be sent to the active backup for the Microsoft? Be set up for active backup? A maybe, probably. I think so. I would say yes. I don't see why not. I think that would work. That would be a weird. That would be a lot of data. I don't know that you need it, but probably you could do it as long as you have enough space to do it. So if you're doing the active backup and you're pulling in the cloud M365 data or G Suite as well, I don't know about why you may want to snapshot it again to have extra copies, but I guess you could. That way, if you're worried about someone taking over ah, if they took over your Synology, they're going to delete your snapshots, by the way. So the better idea would be to back that data up to another device. That would be the ideal situation where you take your data that you have, all of your active backup data, and then replicate that to just replicate it to another Synology using Hyper Backup. So that would probably be the better idea for protection. Need to redo my Cloudflare tunnel for Home Assistant. Recent Home Assistant update broke the Cloudflare add-on going to separate. I actually recommend instead of Cloudflare that you get, it's up to you. But if you use the integration from the company that is from Cloudflare, like the people that behind Cloudflare offer a relay server that you can, it's like, I don't know, $100 a year. It's worth it in my opinion. What are your recommendations for VPN capable routers and firewalls? pfSense and specifically the Netgate ones. My Bitwarden question was triggered by my attempt to migrate off of LastPass. Got it. Good and happy migration to you. That's the yeah, lots of people want to migrate off of it. I don't blame them. Oh, let's see here. You're good to go with Sentinel One. I work for a large financial institution. Fantastic product. Yeah. I still like it. the incident I had was a debate with their security people at SentinelOne. I had a disagreement. I documented it thoroughly in a video that is got Huntress and SentinelOne in there. But I also state we're still using it, and it's still a good product. So, oh, in on my credit card hit during that time period. Yeah, well, things were down. LastPass kicks you while you're down. So, how do I delete a virtual hard drive? I don't. How'd you create a virtual hard drive from NAS? I don't understand that question. Maybe. Can you purge phishing emails from Synology to backup? Can you purge phishing? You can purge emails, I imagine. So, I mean, if you, that's kind of a different. I mean, how do you want to purge them? Do you want to? It's all. I guess how do you identify them and how are you tracking that so you can get them out of there? I mean, I don't understand the question of what you're trying to accomplish. Is there a way to run Plex outside your network without opening up any ports? Like you could build a Plex server in cloud. It's not, you can spin up a Linode instance and stick your Plex server in there. You can. You will just, what you'll run into though is you go, oh, running a Plex server on Linode has some expenses and egress fees and storage fees to get all the things I want inside of Plex. So yeah, you can. It's just a matter of budget. You know, the reason people usually want to run it for home is one, you can put more storage at home cheaper than the cloud. And two, it's very accessible even if the internet's down. So if your internet goes down, but you got power, you're still watching Plex or whatever your media player of choice is. Given your context, do you know anything about sales comps for SentinelOne? Sounds like a really good product. Just curious. You want to know what they pay their salespeople? I don't understand the question. I don't know what they pay their salespeople if that's your question. So I don't know. I mean, good salespeople selling enterprise products make good money, but I don't know exactly if that's what your question was about or not. I'm gonna wind this down. I'll give you guys about 20 more minutes before I run out here. But the I have in here, and I don't know if I'll do a video on this or not, but the net data. I have some stuff I'm working on, and I found some bugs with one of the TrueNAS. I don't know if I have the time to dig into this the way I want to. But first, I've been using Graylog to make some of this look better and prettier. Let me find my which by the way, if you haven't heard, I'm not Graylog. Sorry, saying the wrong thing here. Let me go back over to here and share this tab instead and bring it up over here. Net data combined with TrueNAS has been kind of fun to dive into some challenges I have. And I found some weird encryption problems where I don't understand why I get good write speeds, but slow read speeds in certain circumstances in TrueNAS scale. And I'm trying to track that down. I may do a video on it because when I do the video, I want to demonstrate what I'm seeing and have someone smarter than me watch the video and try and explain if I'm right, if I'm wrong, or why it's doing what it's doing. And essentially, if you have, and I just had to do a migration for all my video stuff because it was causing problems with my video editing, I found a bug where the first time I read a file, even though, and yes, the file's in ARC, the first time I read the file out of ARC, it goes into pinning a single CPU and giving me really, really slow transfer speeds. But if I read that file again, the problem goes away. This problem only occurs when reading and when it's encrypted. And I just by default encrypt everything. So I migrated my data, all my videos, to an unencrypted data store, and the problem went away. Now, the weird thing is the write speed is consistently great. So why is it only reading? Even though it's in cache, it has a slow read speed, and I can't figure that one out. So that's been a challenge. And I was using this to do it, but I just really love net data. It's so cool. Look at all this stuff. I had some anomalies earlier, and I could find them. I can look at my Elasticsearch database. Let's go back because I was updating this about a couple hours ago. Wait, when was it? Oh, look, this is when we were doing it. So, hey, look, this is Tom rebooting. So we got some downtime. This is when we restarted something and restarted Elasticsearch. Let's dive in deeper. And yeah, there we go. So now we're going to filter that metric and let's correlate this data with everything else. We can, what was going on during these times and what were the loads like and everything else. It's just kind of cool the way you can do this with and get all that data. I've done a video on this already, but the product still amazes me. It's still, I love net data. It's free. They have an article on how to use this with Windows, and I'm going to eventually do an updated video on how to use this Windows as well. So it's funny just how cool of a product that is for free. This is a great open source tool that probably I should have mentioned. There's your fifth one for that MSP question earlier. You're trying to get an industry character enterprise sales. I mean, I know enterprise salespeople that make $250,000-$300,000 a year. So I don't know. I guess need way more context for it depends on your position and what your sales on there. Docker sunsetting free team subscriptions. I don't really have an opinion on that at this time. Let's see. Tailscale broke things. That's fun. That's because it encrypts after it's been written to disk. It does not encrypt in memory. Well, this is what's confusing. If I create a random file and grab random file, so dev random, I make a 5 gig file. That file will copy really, really slow with a single threaded process. Copy the file a second time, it copies really, really fast with all the threads. But if you write to the disk, it writes fast all the time. And that's what's got me so confused on it. So yeah. Is the installation TuneS standard net data install? No, not exactly. That's a good question I should answer right away. So let's log in and we'll talk about how this works. And I have too many tabs open. There we go. Less tabs. Go to apps, go to the web portal, continue, share this tab instead. And here is it running on here. Now, by the way, you install this as an app inside of here into the apps in TrueNAS Scale. It's not available on TrueNAS Core at the moment. I don't know if it will. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's too much. I don't think it is. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But you install the app as a Docker container, and yeah, it works great. You even get all the ZFS data in here. So I like it. It's slick. Matter of fact, it even has all the K8 information. You have all the things in here. It's cool. So when I'm doing any of these tests, I can do these tests and get granular data in here about what is or is not in the ZFS cache. And it puzzles me why it does it. Maybe I'll do a video just to explain more in depth. And what hardware are you using? I said a problem at E200 series E4, did not an AMD or other Zen processors. Yes, the problem exists on all processors, but is exasperated on this one. And this one is and we'll pull up the dashboard here. This is the real problem right here. That someone's going to go, well, of course, this is the Intel Atom CPU 37582.2 gigahertz. Definitely the Atom processor is greatly affected by this. So it's not that the problem is non-existent. It's just so fast in the other processors. It's pretty much a non-issue. So that is a definite issue. So tool suggestion for MySQL. I'm not a Microsoft SQL person, so I am the wrong person to ask. So that's not a question I can easily answer. But yeah, it's just a weird bug that just kind of drives me a little bit crazy. I could probably simulate it by copying some files back and forth. Because wait, I'm trying to think. Do I have an encrypted location anymore? Hmm. Yes, I do. I do have an encrypted location, so I can definitely find a way to make this happen. So we'll make some data move. Hey, look, I'm transferring at a really fast rate here. It doesn't zoom into these very well. They scale, so maybe yeah, there's no easy way to display those. But you can see I'm able to get really, I mean, 3 gig transfer, no problem. Transferring here. So it's a reasonably fast system, even though it's got an Atom processor in here. I'm able to move the data at a relatively fast speed. It's moving the data back that always creates the problem. So let me go new folder, test. And now we'll test this again. And this is now writing to encrypt. It's going to be a little bit slower. Um, go back to here. Now I'm moving it back. It's moving it back at, once again, almost 4 gigs writing. So my write speed is really fast. So awesome. So would it peak out it here? Zoom in, enhance. Is that how we do it? Enhance. Got to click the mouse properly. There we go. Enhance. So yeah, we've seen a peak, 4 gigs. So awesome. Definitely moving some data here. Copied 3 files. That's what these 3 peaks are. Now, let me delete the files. Delete. I think if I do this, it will go down to an incredibly slow speed. Yep, there we go. Now you're seeing it. Copying something back from encrypted. Now, please note the lack of disk reading going on here. We're not seeing disk reads. It's pulling it out of cache because it's cache. It got copied over there. But this is what happens. And if we use, they're barely being used. Where it's not stretching it. So here is yeah, here's 2 CPUs being used, but the other one's not. So where's it at? Disk wait, wrong ones. CPU, where's the breakdown of each processor? Oh, here we go. Yeah, core utilization. It used all the cores here, but you notice it's not using the cores here. It's using a core. Here's a single core, CPU 6. It's just getting hammered. And my transfer speeds are abysmal. I'm getting 0.6. Like it's just so slow. So it's a weird problem. I mean, it's an easy problem to simulate because the first tests were not done with an encrypted one. But if I copy these files again, and once again, they're reading from cache, it will bring them to me incredibly fast. I don't know. It's such a weird bug. What makes it decide it only should use one CPU when clearly it should be using all the CPUs? Yep, there's one core carrying all the work, but at the same time, no disk write. Look, I mean, disk reads. Disk reads are just nothing. We're not pulling this from disk. We're pulling this completely out of memory. That seems bad. Oh, weird. One of my lights decided to turn off for no reason. Then it turned back on. I don't know. Strange. Time to buy new lights. So we copied them. Now we're going to do it one more time. We're just going to copy the same files again, which of course they're cached once, they're cached again. So delete them. and paste, and wham, we're back up to fast speeds again. We're still no disk reads, but I'm getting files copied back at like 5 gigs now, 5.5 gigs. Mystery. So, VPN speed is listed on the site for Netgate. It's not going to be fast. Will it work? Yes. Will it be fast? No. So that's going to be your big challenge with that. It's just not going to be fast. Fun stuff for sure. Yeah, the CPU load when I'm moving, it's funny because the CPU load here is a steady 17, 16%. Over here, the CPU load is about the same, but we're moving, up to 5 gigs worth of data here. We're all those files copied back like immediately. So such a weird bug. And by the way, if we go back over here to CPUs while that was happening, it still peaked out this CPU a little bit, so it didn't spread it evenly, but there's still more of a spread than there was here. I don't know. Maybe I'll sit down and do a bug report. I wonder if it decrypts the data. I think my guess is it stores it encrypted. I guess that's my answer. I don't know. Let me look. Let's look what the Atom supports. I think it supports AES-NI. Let's find out. It is an older CPU. Yeah. It supports QAT. I don't see AES on here though. So it doesn't appear to have AES support. Maybe that's why. Nope. Intel AES instructions right here. I was just overlooking it. So it does support it. I don't know. Maybe it's not engaging on read. And that's probably what it is. I think there's a bug in there. But for TrueNAS Scale people running encryption on it, the thing is, I'm trying to figure out if it's worth my time. Do I load a system up with TrueNAS Core, do this test, load it with TrueNAS Scale, do the test, and see if it's a core problem and a scale problem or just a scale problem? And being that it's a scale problem, because they're pushing scale, I may do a video just because it was a vexing problem for me to have my video software stutter and not know why my video software was stuttering. My video stuttering, I kept thinking it was something to do with what I was doing. It turns out my video stuttering problem went away by moving my videos to an unencrypted data set. And then my videos stopped stuttering. Now, I went and did this research before time, but I assume maybe I was running into some issues. This is where net data was invaluable in scratching my head and going, oh, wait, look, I can start breaking down these different types of transfers and figuring out what's going on in each situation. I mean, when you look at this section here and you're going, wait, you're only getting this tiny little bit of data. But when you play it back for this, you're like, but the system is clearly capable of substantially more data. So how does it read so fast and why is it only in certain situations? Matter of fact, some of my stuttering would go away because once you read the file once into the video editor, it had cached it and it would then the first time it would deliver it slow and then it would deliver it faster later. So it was just some weird quirkiness I was running into. And then if you have, like I do, you have a lot of project files in your video, it swaps out which ones may be in cache. And then sometimes you would get one of the elements coming in really slow again, and you'd have a stuttering problem back in my video editing. So it's a lot, but it's a fun learning exercise because it's what it really is about is understanding like how are you going to troubleshoot that problem. And I want to come at the video from that point to educate people. Like here's all the steps. So you have now the tools in your hand to be able to troubleshoot this. That's the biggest thing, is because you may not have a video editing need like I do, but you may have some other need that will get pushed that goes, oh yeah, I am having this problem. I am running into a slow problem moving these files, whatever those files might be. I'm just really curious if this problem exists in core. Like I said, it clearly exists in scale. I'm less clear if it exists in core or not. All right. Well, I have now rambled on for an hour and a half. Is there any last minute questions, or have I answered them all? Because now I'm going to get back to a couple things I got to do and might go to the next meeting. If it's not stored encrypted in cache, yeah, that's a question that I kind of want to learn from the some smart ZFS engineer. Like, I think I have a forum post. Let's pull up the TrueNAS forums. I posted in the TrueNAS forum. I don't think anyone replied to me. I asked this question. Oh, someone replied. Let's go look. Let's read this together. This is a new post. I was out of town for a couple days, so let's read this together. As you can imagine, our standard QA process test for functional operation now say performance testing at different use cases. Linux encryption is very different from FreeBSD, so several issues to be resolved. More improvements are coming in scale later this year. With Micron 50%, there's also viability of QLC write speeds, the timing size, different cache. We try to use higher performance as baseline performance. It's more reliable. Yeah, but it's because it's caching. This is completely answered in this part here. So, well, they're aware there's performance issues on there. Linux encryption is very different than BSD. Okay, so there are several use cases to be resolved. More improvements are coming. And I am excited because this is happening later this month. So maybe I won't even do the video until later this month when the new version's out, because maybe it fixes that. Can you show your XOA backup remote settings and remote server on the same VLAN as XOA? Yes. I have a storage. It's on the storage network. So you put that on the storage network. That's the solution for that. You can put it on the same, or you can put it on a storage network, as long as it's reachable by XOA. Can you get NVMe over fiber? I don't know. Is Linux UniFi controller set up? Is up to date as UDM controller? Don't use I don't ever recommend using Windows. Definitely use the Linux one. They're the same. The Linux one is kind of the same as what's on the UDM. Question about XCPG and pass-through. The backups include pass-through configs in case the full restore No. Pass-through is that I know of not backed up. So encryption on SS. Well, and it's kind of a weird performance problem. I think they're gonna sort through it, and it's like we just did another server I just did that Stornado server, and the reason we went with Core is because the enterprise market is still using Core. FreeBSD is solid, reliable, predictable. So yes. You should do a full general intro to principles of IT. Yes, I plan to do some of that stuff. More news on that coming soon. I will probably, I don't know. I don't know if I'll go all the way to offer courses, but I may do some in-person events for training and things like that. So that's definitely a possibility. As an EV owner, are you seeing public infrastructure cost creep or skyrocket upwards? Public infrastructure costs, not really, but I mean, energy costs are pretty steady here in Michigan, but different states have different costs, and there's reasons, lots of them, that the energy rates are higher now in Europe than they were. So, but that's a geopolitical problem. It's I mean, it's all technology in the base of it here, but there's a little thing going on over in the Ukraine that seems to be driving prices up a little bit of electricity. So that's definitely a thing. Tom the Trainer. I mean, before YouTube, I did public speaking and I still continue to do public speaking and advisory roles and things like that. Matter of fact, one of the emails I just got is also me advising a school on how to one of the local universities and guiding them. I do things like this. This is my reference to Comptia earlier and me wanting to, with my other peers, participate as a large peer group and in this industry of how do we get things better. So yes. Um, how do you simulate a cable disconnect? You just disconnect it. So um, let me share this tab instead. It I mean, if you've ever used it, you could probably use this button here that says connect or disconnect. You just click it. So I'm not going to kick it on that. I don't know if they're using it. Or something I'm not using. Uh, yeah. You just hit connect or disconnect on that and it'll disconnect it. So you click boop. Yes, I should have Veronica come on here. I want to. Veronica's such an expert on a lot of the intricacies of some of the classic hardware, far more than me. And I think it's a fun topic where we do classic vlog Thursday, where we dive into that. By the way, subscribe to Veronica Explains if you haven't already. A great channel, lots of knowledge. Those, the people ask you what I watch on YouTube, and a lot of times it can be some of the esoteric knowledge things that as a is easy way to describe that category. It's always a lot of fun. Veronica's got a wealth of knowledge that she's been sharing on her channel. So your recommendation for VPN to transfer files over to your NAS. Don't use VPN to transfer files, but if you have to, use something like WebDev. It's probably faster to use it that way. Cobalt Thursdays. Here we go. Oh, I'm just going to where's it at? I'll share where I'm going. I'm wondering how many people are going. There's a local event here called IT in the D. So it's the network people one beer at a time. That's their casual networking for social information technology professional in the metro Detroit area. No agenda, no speakers, no cover charge ever. Just networking with IT professionals. Um, 48 people going. So yeah, I can be late. This goes all the way till 8 p.m. Well, no, it goes after 8 p.m. The event's over, but the event's not over until the people leave. So if you're in the Detroit area, you may find me here in Ferndale at that address. Oh, let's see. Yeah, the event's not until you leave. Yeah, it's kind of a fun event. A couple of my friends put this together. They've been doing it for like 10 years now. They're like, you know, once a month, let's get the IT nerds together. And they specifically do not have sponsored or pitching or anything like that. It's very casual. Just come on, we're all in the IT industry. Let's hang out together. So it's pretty much, I mean, there's some people there that are, I call IT adjacent, but everybody's welcome. It's a social thing. It's focused on IT nerds, but IT adjacent. We have people with some of them who worked a lot of HR stuff. Actually, it's interesting because policy things are intertwined very much with IT now. So there's a few people that, I mean, they're just policy writers. They're not technically the traditional sense of IT, but writing policy and controls for policy at the enterprise level is an IT department thing to some extent. So there's a lot of interesting thing on there. So it's a lot of fun. That's why I go hang out with people and do fun things like that. So, all right. So hopefully you've all subscribed to Veronica's channel. I am going to bounce now because from where I live, this is roughly a 25-minute drive. I'm surprised there's not something like that in Grand Rapids. I'm assuming GR is Grand Rapids. So, um, yeah, I don't know. There's not many of these type of events, and because too many events get very vendor sponsored, and it always bothers me because it just becomes like a sales pitch to buy stuff from them, and I don't want to listen to that. I want to go in just and there's no agenda. That's actually what makes it fun. It's like we're gonna put all of you in the room. There we go. That's the agenda. So I can't say no agenda. The agenda is everyone show up in this room and get a beer. And if you don't want a beer, get a water. We're fine with that. Here's a beer, maybe some tacos. Because I think there's tacos at this place. So all right. Everyone, wonderful as always. Send those questions in to Vlog Thursday. I like answering them. They're a lot of fun. Participate in my forums. That's a lot of fun too. So yeah, 15-hour drive. That'd be far. 25 minutes using a Tesla. Yes, the Tesla will drive me there. That's my usual way of going. I don't drive as much anymore. My office is really close to where I live. I have my studio at home and my office is like a mile away. So I don't drive much. I actually walk for the good exercise, but I'll drive to this one because even driving, it's a 25-minute drive. All right. Thanks again, everyone, and take care.